When I was still living in Africa, a very common anecdote that I would hear is that a particular person would get a sickness, perhaps malaria, and this would give them such an intense fever that they would have an altered state of consciousness, and through that have spiritual, mystical experiences that they find very spiritually and psychologically healing. And lately, I got the coronavirus, and I found that this was definitely the case for myself to some degree. Now, most definitely, my case of coronavirus was not nearly as bad as malaria is for most people. Malaria can very often be fatal, but as I'm a young, healthy person, the coronavirus was very unlikely to cause me serious harm. But having said that, over the past 2 years now, when coronavirus has been floating around in the world, I have personally not been stressed at all about getting it. It just didn't seem scary to me personally, which was a good thing because it means I didn't spend the last 2 years in anxiety about getting it. But since I did get it, when I did get it, I must say the coronavirus was worse than I expected. I did have a lot of burning sensations in the lungs, a lot of coughing, of course, burning just fever in the forehead, and I really struggled to sleep. In particular, the sleep I found very interesting because my dreams were much more dynamic in nature, much more random, to do with things that I don't usually dream about. But I won't get into my dreams in this video, but definitely the fever caused by the coronavirus influenced my dreams a lot and in general made my dreams much more rich and diverse. But moving on to meditation now, because that's what I was really interested in, I think the coronavirus made a very big noticeable impact. The biggest difference is that the coronavirus and the fever that it caused really made my mind very confused. And not in an absolute sense where I, didn't know where in the world I was. I could still function normally, but my sense of creativity and my sense of productivity totally dropped off the charts. I had no creative ideas at all and no real burning desire to be productive. And really the only thing I produced during this time was some paintings, which was actually very fun and kept me in a Zen state of consciousness. And really I'm glad that I have that projector that I recently bought because that allowed me to make some really nice paintings that I felt really good about. But anyway, let's not get distracted by the paintings that I did. What I found was when I was meditating, because my creativity and productivity were totally gone, and my state of confusion was a lot higher, there was a lot less mental constructs being created by the mind. My mind wasn't trying to play games of thinking about things from different perspectives or figuring things out, and instead this feeling of confusion was just overwhelming. Because usually I feel like the mind is always grappling with some level of confusion. It's like we're walking through the forest and the mind is trying to put together the puzzle pieces and try and find the path in life and trying to construct where it sees the different trees, if that makes any sense. But during the coronavirus, what I allowed my mind to do was to be totally enveloped by confusion. And what this felt like is I was less in a nice trail through the woods, and my mind was totally enveloped by a swamp with just bushes and bushlands and shrubbery growing everywhere. And I found that really interesting because when the mind was allowed to be swamped by confusion, this actually connected me to my heart. Because the mind just totally gave up this game of trying to construct a worldview. And what that put me in touch with was the flow of energy, purely simply the flow of energy going through the mind and through the body. And it was very interesting to notice the transition between being in a mental state of confusion and then suddenly everything would break down into a flowing state. And this flowing state very naturally brings up aspects of the heart. Also, what I found really interesting, also related to the heart opening, but slightly different, was all sorts of states of consciousness that my mind just wanted to call bliss city. So as these states of flow happened, it was like karma, coiled up karma in my body was being released. And the little visual metaphor I have for you on that one is it was like a noodle. If you can imagine a 2-minute noodle, a long noodle. These noodles were like wrapped into my body around all sorts of energy points, and each strand of noodle was like a karmic strand. But these noodles weren't soft and floppy. They were very malleable and movable, but they were like an elastic string, and as they were coiled up, they contained energy. And as my mind was getting confused and I allowed my whole body to experience that confusion into a flow state, it was like the coiled up energy within me, within these karmic noodles. As I was experiencing it, the energy was just unwinding and uncoiling and shooting out. And as this uncoiling energy happens during a meditation, the flow state meditation, it was releasing deep, deep bliss in me. Most notably at the sacral areas, sometimes at the heart, at the base of the spine. Those are the 3 that most commonly happened. And the word I just wanted to use when this happened is bliss city. Such utter, deep, unexplainable bliss, because I would literally be sitting there in meditation. The mind would be confused. I would totally allow the confusion to swamp the mind. And then as things drop into flow, energy would start to uncoil. And that leads to just undeniable, really, really strong, happy, heart-opening states of bliss, all during a fever and while you're coughing. So it was quite interesting to me how being sick can have these psychological, spiritual implications on you if you are an introspector and a meditator. Now, that's really all. I want to keep this video short. I guess the encouragement is for you, if you get sick again, to perhaps look inwardsly and continue your meditation practice. Perhaps embrace the confusion that your mind is experiencing and allow that to envelop you and allow that confusion to dissolve into a flow state.